What about President Trump's influence on how Republicans voted? Is this totally his party at this moment?
Yeah, this is Trump's party. Even senators, Republican senators running in competitive states in places like Arizona and Colorado stuck with the president on this because they have made the calculation that they want to get reelected in November. They need to be on the president's side. There are risks of standing with Trump, with voters who may not like Trump, with suburban women, with college-educated voters, but it is a dangerous place for a Republican to be. Just this evening, Mitt Romney, who didn't vote, by the way, to convict President Trump, he only voted to listen to some witnesses, was disinvited by the American Conservative Union to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, that is a big deal next month here in Washington, as a sign that it is unacceptable even to say, you know, I'd like to hear from John Bolton.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Republicans are with Trump, and if you're not with Trump, you're not in good standing with the Republicans. Like, if you're certainly not in office. You look at former Senators Bob Corker, former Senator Jeff Flake. They're looking at this from the sidelines. That's because they decided to speak out against Trump. And so if you don't want that to happen, you have to stay that line. You cannot go and cross him. And he's not someone who, as I said, he's not going to let it go. They're going to make sure, even though there was that whole big thing over, you know, the heads on a pike and all of that, but you don't have to, the White House doesn't have to put pressure on these senators. They know what the repercussions are if they go against the president.
Jake, what are the options now for Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer between now and Wednesday? Is it all about trying to peel off some Republican votes against President Trump? Is it about making a case to the nation? What's going on tonight at the Capitol?
Yeah, he doesn't have any options. He's basically has to cry uncle. I mean, he's out of options. So on Monday and Tuesday, there will be a lot of talking, but not a lot of action. And then on Wednesday is the final vote. So I don't see much opportunity for him. And Democrats politically have to rely on the fact that they believe they've created a compelling narrative that this president exists outside of the bounds of the law and is not lawful and has conducted himself in a way that's not befitting of the presidency, and that Republicans in the House and the Senate are complicit in that behavior. I'm skeptical, based on my reporting and talking to people on Capitol Hill and at the party committees, that any of this will matter in November. I can't imagine in Colorado that people are going to be asking about Cory Gardner's vote to not call witnesses. Instead, they're going to be talking, if past is precedent and if our reporting is correct, they're going to be asking him about health care, about how to make people's jobs better, how to give them higher wages in Colorado. I don't imagine, based on my reporting, that they're going to be asking about the witnesses. Now, Democrats cite polling that witnesses are very popular. I don't doubt that, but what I do doubt is that it's very high on the list of people's priorities as they go to the ballot box literally 9 months from now in November in a presidential year. And absent some sort of event outside of what we know, I can't imagine it's going to be a massive motivating issue across the board in November.
Let's take a closer look at the arguments made by the Trump legal team and House Democrats.
Every public official that I know believes that his election is in the public interest. And if a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo that results in impeachment.
You are being asked to remove a duly elected president of the United States, and you're being asked to do it in an election year.
If you say you can't hold a president accountable in an election year where they're trying to cheat in that election, then you are giving them carte blanche.
Karoun, no one covers Chairman Schiff, the lead impeachment manager, better than you. You stake out his committee room day in, day out. He began his argument today by talking about the explosive reporting by the New York Times about John Bolton's upcoming book. How vexed is he and other House Democrats about the inability of all these Bolton stories to move Republicans?
Pretty vexed. I mean, look, it's the half of the articles of impeachment have to do with obstruction of Congress. The House wanted to have more of the firsthand witnesses who were close to Trump come in, talk to them during their inquiry, corroborate what they found, and make the case that they brought to the Senate stronger. And this has been kind of a central point of the tension between the House and the Senate in the course of this trial, because the senators in the GOP have been saying, well, you should have brought us a better case, but no, we're not going to subpoena the first-hand witnesses who could corroborate your case that is otherwise potentially convincing. And so this has been a real push and pull there of, if these witnesses had been allowed to come forward, if Bolton had been allowed to come forward by the administration before this, would he have made such a stronger case that some of the Republicans would have had to have voted with Democrats to convict the president? That's going to be a question that we can't answer, because we're probably not going to hear from John Bolton. But as a result of that, we're in this situation where there is a greater debate happening over whether the case is too much based on hearsay, and whether anybody can really speak to what the president's motives were if they weren't necessarily getting their cues directly from the president. And that's why you see a lot of the back and forth between the two legal teams looking at the exact same conversations, exact same documents, exact same sets of evidence, and coming up with two completely different explanations for it, because they disagree about what the president's intentions were, whether they were legitimate in trying to, whether the Bidens represented corruption to the president, and that was a legitimate thing for him to ask for the investigations into them to be announced, or if it was illegitimate and him putting his personal interest over the national interest. And we really didn't come to a final conclusion of what that is, or any sort of a consensus of what really went on there, because both sides never really got to meet in the middle or hear from the people who might have weighed in that were closer to Trump.
Ayesha, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I think this is why that point about what these firsthand witnesses and what Bolton would have said, I think that's why Alan Dershowitz, his arguments were so important for Republicans, because it gave them something to kind of hang their decisions on, because he also said that even if everything that Bolton says is true, that doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. And so I don't think that they needed Alan Dershowitz to give them that idea, but they have Alan Dershowitz saying that, so now they can say, we have a constitutional lawyer, this respected lawyer, and he says this doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. And that's essentially what you had Lamar Alexander saying. The president did do something improper. He said he believes that Democrats did make their case. So he's like, we don't need any more witnesses. I agree. He did something improper, but he shouldn't be impeached over it.
We're not going to hear from John Bolton in front of the Senate. Yeah. We're going to hear from John Bolton.
Yeah.
We're going to hear from John Bolton with his book, and perhaps in other ways as well. And I think it is not a surprise that we're ending up with the Senate voting largely along party lines to acquit the president. What's been a surprise in this period is the amount of evidence that has tumbled from the sky that goes to this point, and that will, I think, continue to be emerging through the next months and weeks.